What do you see when you look into the mirror? Not the reflection of your skin, not the lines of your face, not the weariness in your eyes, but the truth that stares back at you when no one else is watching. That moment where silence presses in and the world is shut out is where your greatest war is fought. The mirror does not lie. It shows you who you have become, and it quietly whispers who you could be. The uncomfortable reality is this: nothing in your life will shift, no door will open, no dream will materialize until you decide to move differently. We spend years blaming circumstances, pointing at betrayal, waiting for luck, for timing, for someone else to change. Yet the mirror remains still. The reflection remains stubborn. Ask yourself, what if the reason nothing changes is because you haven't? What if every complaint, every frustration, every disappointment is not a signal of the world's cruelty, but a reminder of your refusal to step into the person you are capable of becoming? This is not about shame. This is about awakening, because the reflection in front of you is not your enemy. It is your invitation. We live under a dangerous illusion, one that seduces nearly everyone at some point in their lives, the belief that change begins outside of us. It is comforting to think that a new city, a new relationship, a new job, or even a streak of luck will suddenly rearrange the chaos we feel within. We tell ourselves that once the external world aligns, then we will finally be free to be who we are meant to be. Yet time and time again, people escape one situation only to find themselves in another that feels strikingly similar. A toxic boss replaced by another toxic boss. A broken relationship followed by a relationship that mirrors the same wounds. Even when life hands us something new, we bring ourselves into it unchanged, and the reflection we see does not alter. The conflict is simple. We keep searching outward for what can only be confronted inward. Philosophers throughout history have whispered this truth, but it remains the hardest lesson for the human heart to accept. Machiavelli, cold and calculating, understood that people resist genuine inner reform with every fiber of their being. We disguise our fear of change by painting our lives differently, rearranging appearances, clinging to rituals, or adopting shallow identities. We chase titles, possessions, and recognition, hoping they will silence the turmoil inside. But all these things are like temporary masks. They cover the cracks but never repair them. The mirror principle teaches us that the world reflects not what we desire, but who we are. If the soul is restless, the world feels chaotic. If the soul is grounded, the world reveals a strange stability. Yet the temptation remains: shift the surface, ignore the roots. Blame becomes our favorite weapon against this uncomfortable reality. We point fingers at the unfair system, the betrayals of friends, the incompetence of leaders, or the cruelty of fate. And perhaps some of those complaints are true, yet even when they are, what does blame actually fix? It hardens us, locks us into a posture of helplessness, and convinces us that we have no agency. It is far easier to declare that the world must change than to admit that we must. We find comfort in imagining ourselves as victims of circumstance, because if we are victims, then we carry no responsibility for the reflection staring back at us. But what happens when the mirror refuses to bend? What happens when no matter how much you point outward, the same pattern continues repeating inward? That is the cage of denial, one built not of iron, but of excuses. This denial manifests in ways both obvious and subtle. Sometimes it is loud, like the man who insists his failures are the fault of everyone around him. Sometimes it is quiet, like the person who hides in endless distractions, scrolling, consuming, numbing, because confronting the mirror feels unbearable. Emotional immaturity avoids responsibility at all cost, while emotional maturity begins to suspect that the world might simply be reflecting what lies inside. A bitter heart will find bitterness in every corner. A suspicious mind will attract endless reasons to confirm its suspicion, and someone who carries self-doubt like a constant companion will walk through a life that seems determined to prove them right. The tragic irony is that most people never see this loop. They do not realize the world is showing them their own shadows. They think life is against them, when in truth, life is simply mirroring them. The conflict deepens when we see that the mirror principle is not just personal but collective. Entire societies project their inner state onto the world. A culture consumed by fear creates leaders who exploit that fear. A generation addicted to validation builds platforms that profit from insecurity. The reflection is amplified, scaled, and fed back to us until it feels like reality itself. We rage against politics, against media, against systems. But these forces are not alien invasions. They are mirrors of the values, choices, and compromises of the people within them. This is why revolutions so often fail. They change the scenery, but not the human heart. You can overthrow a ruler, but if the reflection remains corrupt, corruption will reappear in new form. History repeats because humanity refuses to confront its own reflection. And yet we cling to the lie that the external must shift first. If they respected me, then I'd respect myself. If life gave me a break, then I'd finally start trying. But the mirror does not work like that. It waits silently, stubbornly, reflecting exactly what is placed before it. If we project self-hatred, we receive confirmation of it. If we project courage, even in small doses, the world reflects opportunities to grow that courage. The problem is not that the mirror is cruel. It is that the mirror is honest. It refuses to flatter us. It does not bend to our excuses. And because of this honesty, the mirror becomes the most feared object in our lives. We avoid it, cover it, even break it. But still, the reflection remains inescapable. This is why the conflict around change feels endless. Deep down, people know the truth, but they resist it because change hurts. It requires dismantling illusions we have spent years building. It demands accountability, which strips away the comforting identity of the victim. It means standing naked before ourselves with no disguise left. And so we stall. We chase new places, new lovers, new distractions, new dreams, always hoping the mirror will finally shift. But nothing shifts. And in that relentless sameness, we eventually face the quiet truth. Until you change, nothing else will. The mirror does not wait for the world. It waits for you. Think of the nights when silence became unbearable, when the glow of a phone screen was the only companion, and the weight of unspoken disappointment pressed against your chest. You promised yourself tomorrow would be different, yet tomorrow arrived wearing the same face as yesterday. The struggle was not in your environment, but in the reflection you kept avoiding. We scroll endlessly, searching for some spark, some answer hidden in the lives of strangers, but all we find is the echo of our own dissatisfaction. The mirror doesn't only exist on the wall. It exists in how the world responds to us, in the conversations that drain us, in the choices we regret. These cycles are not accidents, they are reflections, repeating until we realize the common thread has always been us. Everyone has experienced that quiet sting of betrayal. The shock of realizing someone we trusted turned out to be another reflection of our own unresolved patterns, a partner who mirrors our insecurities, a friend who embodies the very wounds we carry. These moments feel cruel, unfair, as though the universe conspires against us. Yet if we look closer, they are mirrors, showing us the places within ourselves we have refused to heal. The person who disrespects you is the reflection of the part of you that tolerates disrespect. The relationship that drains you is the reflection of the part of you that does not believe you deserve more. These realizations arrive painfully, like a sudden cut, but in their pain lies an invitation. Life repeats what we need to confront, not what we want to escape. Transformation rarely begins in triumph. It almost always begins in heartbreak. Consider the man who loses everything he thought defined him, the career, the title, the admiration of others. In that collapse, he finally sees the emptiness he had been avoiding all along. Or the woman who discovers that her endless giving has left her invisible, unrecognized, forgotten. That pain is not simply punishment. It is a mirror breaking, forcing her to see how little she has given herself. These are not random tragedies. They are the moments when the reflection screams so loudly that you cannot ignore it anymore. Transformation hides behind pain because pain strips away illusion. Only when you have been stripped bare do you begin to see what is real. And in those moments of unbearable clarity, the possibility of becoming someone new finally opens. We often envy those who rise from ashes, who seem to walk through fire and emerge stronger. We call them lucky, or extraordinary, or chosen. But in truth, their transformation was born from the same raw human struggle you know too well. They faced the mirror and refused to keep looking away. They endured the sting of seeing themselves honestly, without the excuses, without the masks. They stopped asking the world to change and started rewriting their own reflection. That choice is never glamorous. It is made in silence, when nobody is cheering, when nobody is watching. It is a private decision to stop betraying yourself, to stop tolerating what diminishes you, to stop expecting rescue. They transformed not because life handed them better cards, but because they finally played their own hand differently. Society, on the other hand, thrives on keeping you distracted from that realization. Everywhere you look, there is something designed to keep you away from the mirror. Entertainment, advertisements, endless promises of quick fixes, all whispering that the answer is somewhere outside. Buy this, achieve that, become this, and finally you'll be enough. And yet, deep down, we know the cycle. We know how temporary that relief is. A new possession, a new experience, even a new relationship might quiet the restlessness for a moment. But soon the mirror reappears, reflecting the same truths we've ignored. The truth society will never sell you is the one thing that actually changes everything. Self-confrontation. Because that doesn't make money. That doesn't feed industries. It only feeds the soul. Perhaps the most relatable experience is the whisper you've heard at least once in your life. I can't live like this anymore. That quiet breaking point is not weakness, it is the beginning of awakening. It comes when the weight of excuses becomes unbearable, when the reflection you've been avoiding finally demands attention. Some people run from that whisper, drowning it in noise, but others allow it to pierce them, and in that piercing they take the first step toward transformation. Maybe it begins small, choosing honesty over pretense, discipline over indulgence, courage over comfort. These choices don't immediately change the world, but they begin to shift the reflection. Each act of alignment between who you are and who you could be changes what the mirror gives back. That whisper, though painful, is life's way of calling you to yourself. The real struggle, the one every human being faces, is not against the world, but against the parts of themselves they refuse to face. You cannot hide from the mirror forever. You cannot endlessly run from your own reflection. Sooner or later, it appears in the form of repeated patterns, broken promises, familiar disappointments, until you either collapse under the weight or rise to rewrite it. That is why transformation feels so personal, so lonely, because no one else can do it for you. People can support you, love you, encourage you, but the moment of reckoning always happens alone, staring at the reflection. And though it may be the most painful confrontation you ever face, it is also the most liberating. Because once you see the reflection clearly, you are no longer bound by it. You finally hold the power to change it. There comes a moment, often after exhaustion has stripped us of every illusion, when silence grows louder than noise. You may sit alone in a room, no music, no conversation, no distractions, and at first the quiet feels unbearable. But if you stay with it, if you refuse to run from it, you begin to sense something beneath the surface. It is faint, almost fragile, but it is there. A light that was never fully extinguished. It flickers in your chest, reminding you that even though you have carried pain, disappointment, and failure, you are still here. Awakening does not announce itself with fireworks. It emerges quietly, like a small flame in the dark, and if you are brave enough to protect it, that flame begins to grow. This light reveals something extraordinary. Your scars are not the evidence of your weakness, but the proof of your endurance. Every wound you carry is a testament that you survived what tried to destroy you. Where once you saw shame, you begin to see stories. Where once you saw brokenness, you begin to see resilience. Awakening requires this shift in vision, this willingness to reinterpret your past not as a series of failures, but as the training ground for your strength. It is not about erasing what has happened. It is about refusing to let it define your reflection. Scars are not prisons, they are reminders that you are unbreakable in ways you once doubted. And once you recognize that truth, the mirror begins to show you someone entirely different. In this awakening, you realize that strength is not measured by domination, by winning, or by appearing untouchable. True strength is the quiet discipline of self-command. It is the ability to choose your response when life provokes you, to remain grounded when chaos surrounds you, to stay aligned with your values even when temptation whispers otherwise. This kind of strength cannot be purchased, cannot be handed to you, and cannot be faked. It must be forged in solitude, in those moments when nobody applauds and nobody notices. You begin to understand that your worth has never been tied to external validation. It has always lived inside you, waiting for you to remember. Awakening is that remembrance. It is the moment you stop searching for permission to exist fully and start embodying the truth that you always belonged here. The mirror, once a source of pain, becomes a tool for transformation. Where you used to avoid your own eyes, now you learn to hold them. You see the tiredness, the grief, the fragility, but you also see the strength that never left. For the first time, you look at yourself without running, without disguises, and in that raw honesty, something changes. You no longer see a stranger staring back at you. You see someone in progress, someone capable of growth, someone worthy of respect. This is not arrogance, it is clarity. Awakening allows you to meet yourself, not as you wish to be, not as the world insists you must be, but as you truly are, flawed, scarred, and yet undeniably strong. The solitude that once felt unbearable begins to transform into sanctuary. You discover that being alone does not mean being abandoned, it means being undistracted. In the stillness, you reconnect with parts of yourself you had silenced, forgotten dreams, suppressed creativity, lost passions. Awakening does not mean adding something new to your life. It often means reclaiming what was already there but buried under fear and noise. This solitude gives birth to clarity. You begin to distinguish between what is truly yours and what you adopted from others. You recognize which voices in your head are echoes of the past, and which belong to the deeper truth within you. This clarity is freedom, and freedom is the soil in which your new reflection begins to grow. There is also a profound shift in how you see the future. Where once you expected the world to change before you could, you now realize that your choices shape the reflection the world gives back. Every act of self-respect reshapes the mirror. Every decision to protect your energy, to set a boundary, to speak truth, rewrites the story you see before you. Awakening is not a single event but a continual practice, a daily commitment to aligning with the self you are becoming rather than the self you used to be. And as you keep choosing this alignment, you notice that the world begins to respond differently. Opportunities that once seemed invisible appear. People who match your new strength arrive. The mirror principle, once a source of suffering, becomes a source of empowerment. Finally, awakening teaches you that the reflection is not your enemy, it is your raw material. The very struggles that made you want to hide from the mirror are the same struggles that now shape your resilience. Every scar adds texture to the person you are building. Every disappointment refines your ability to discern what truly matters. Every lonely night builds the foundation of your inner strength. You no longer fear the reflection because you see it for what it is, a canvas, not a verdict. The awakening is not the end of your battle, but the beginning of a new one. This time, not against yourself, but for yourself. And when you understand this, the mirror no longer chains you. Nothing will change until you do. That truth is both liberating and terrifying. It strips away the excuses that have shielded us for years and forces us to accept responsibility for our own lives. At first this feels heavy, almost unbearable. Because if the reflection won't change until we do, then all the power and all the responsibility sits in our hands. Yet hidden inside that weight is freedom. You are not at the mercy of chance or of people or of fate. You are not doomed to repeat yesterday simply because yesterday was all you knew. The mirror waits silently, stubbornly, and the second you decide to change how you show up, it changes too. The revolution you have been waiting for is not outside in the world. It is within you, in the private battles no one sees. This is where the real uprising begins, not with a crowd, not with applause, but with the decision whispered into your own soul. I will no longer betray myself. As you step into this awareness, you begin to see how much of life's chaos was fueled not by circumstances, but by your own untransformed reflection. Every argument that repeated, every disappointment that lingered, every cycle that refused to break, it all mirrored the parts of you that remained unexamined. And when you finally confront them, when you choose courage over denial, something shifts. The world itself seems to move differently, not because it has changed, but because you have. What once felt hostile now feels like feedback. What once looked like rejection now looks like redirection. The mirror principle begins to work in your favor the moment you commit to transformation. This is not magic, it is alignment. The outer world reflects the inner world, and when your inner world transforms, life bends toward it. The empowering truth is that you no longer have to wait for validation. You no longer have to wait for people to recognize your worth before you recognize it yourself. Self-worth is not a gift someone else can hand you. It is a truth you must claim, and once you do, the reflection begins to honor it. People treat you differently when you treat yourself differently. Opportunities open when you stop approaching them with self-sabotage. The reflection rewards integrity, not pretense. The revolution of inner transformation is not about becoming perfect, it is about becoming honest. It is about refusing to live in denial, refusing to mask wounds with distractions, refusing to settle for a life that does not reflect the depth of who you really are. This honesty is uncomfortable, but it is also the birthplace of freedom. When you embrace this inner revolution, solitude becomes your ally. Silence, once unbearable, becomes fertile ground for clarity. You begin to see that the applause of others was never the measure of your worth, and the validation of society was never the key to your freedom. The true revolution has nothing to do with what the world thinks of you, and everything to do with what you decide about yourself. This is why so many people miss it. They are too busy chasing noise. They think change must be loud, dramatic, and visible. But the most radical transformations are quiet. They happen in the unseen decisions, in the solitary moments, in the commitment to live with truth, even when no one is watching. That is the power of awakening. It cannot be stolen, it cannot be faked, and once it takes root, it cannot be reversed. Imagine, then, the power of living a life where every action, every relationship, every pursuit is born not from desperation, but from alignment. This is what happens when the reflection changes. You no longer beg the world to respect you, you embody respect. You no longer chase love from emptiness, you carry love within you, and it attracts those who recognize it. You no longer seek power through control, you cultivate power through mastery of yourself. The mirror no longer frightens you because it no longer reflects a stranger. It reflects a self you have built, a self you trust, a self you refuse to betray. And in that reflection, you find the only validation that ever mattered, your own. So the call is not to wait for life to soften, or for people to understand, or for the stars to align. The call is to step into yourself now, to rewrite your reflection with the choices you make today. Nothing will change until you do. But when you do, everything changes. The doors that once seemed locked begin to open. The cycles that once held you hostage begin to break. The weight you thought was permanent begins to lift. The world does not give you transformation. It mirrors the transformation you choose. And the choice has always been yours. The mirror waits. The silence waits. Your future self waits. The revolution has already begun, and it begins with you.